search in the string XML. We have the search suggest authority that happens and we create a timeout. Probably if successful. Uh, is when we append the part. We've actually explained this in the previous tutorial.